Picture a young, hot-headed warrior. They can unleash immense raw energy, but they lack the discipline to control it, often fracturing the very ground they stand on. Nations can act the exact same way. This is a chart mapping a nation's economic growth. In macroeconomics, growth is strictly a quantitative measure of power. We track it by looking at the steady increase in a country's real national income and per capita income over a long period. It tracks the actual output of goods and services rather than a temporary spike in market prices. But an explosive GDP doesn't automatically yield a healthy society. A nation's economic output can shatter records, while its citizens continue to struggle with poor education, crumbling healthcare, and a lack of basic infrastructure. That is where economic development comes in. If growth is sheer muscle, development is the discipline required to aim it. It is the active process of taking a rising national income and investing it into qualitative changes, like building advanced technological sectors, reforming institutions, and deliberately alleviating poverty. Because of this distinction, it is entirely possible for a country to experience a massive accumulation of wealth at the top, yet remain critically underdeveloped. If the newfound capital doesn't flow into public services or create broad employment opportunities, the average person's standard of living stays stagnant. Piling up cash and assets is a hollow victory if a country lacks the structural maturity to convert that wealth into a better, more equitable life for its population. When a country struggles to make that conversion, we see the visible symptoms of underdevelopment. Notice the physical density and heavy strain on local infrastructure. These nations face a specific set of compounding barriers. Critically low per capita income leads to widespread mass poverty and malnutrition. Simultaneously, technological backwardness and unusually high population growth neutralize whatever minor economic gains the country manages to produce. Escaping this cycle requires a focused, multi-tiered strategy. First, an economy must leverage its physical assets. This means properly utilizing natural resources, accelerating capital formation through productive investments, and adopting technology to increase efficiency. But physical tools require the right societal framework to function. A country needs stable political administration, mass public education for efficient workforces, and attitudes willing to embrace innovation. Consider Japan. Historically, the nation was severely deficient in natural resources, usually a crippling economic handicap. Yet by prioritizing human capital, widespread education, and technological discipline, Japan built one of the most advanced economies in the world. A nation's trajectory isn't dictated by the minerals in its ground, but by the organizational and educational rigor applied to its resources. The UN's Human Development Index maps progress across 3 pillars: a healthy life, quantified by life expectancy, knowledge, measured by literacy and school enrollment, and finally, real GDP per capita, acting as a proxy for a decent standard of living. Notice how raw income is only one fraction of the equation here. Under the HDI framework, accumulating capital is recognized as a means to improve human well-being, rather than the ultimate goal of human endeavor. High marks on this index demand specific conditions. A nation must successfully refine its raw economic output into a functional, supportive environment where human potential can actually thrive. Even after a nation reaches a high level of development, it faces one persistent final challenge. It must confront the long-term ecological toll and the social strain caused by its own massive rates of consumption. The 1996 Human Development Report outlined this risk clearly. Economic growth can easily become jobless rather than creating opportunities. It can be culturally rootless, often socially ruthless, and entirely environment-destroying, rendering the entire pursuit futureless. Now, avoiding that outcome requires sustainable development. This is the practice of meeting the resource needs of the present population without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Achieving this balance means shifting policy priorities. It requires the preservation of ecological resources, transitioning toward renewable energy, and implementing systems that are strictly pro-people, pro-job, and pro-nature to reduce both pollution and long-term economic debt. We can map the entire macroeconomic journey. A nation begins by building raw output through economic growth. It matures that wealth into an improved quality of life through economic development. Finally, it secures its longevity through sustainable development. Ultimately, true progress demands a long-term perspective. A successful economy builds a system that ensures its society can survive and thrive for generations to come, rather than simply maximizing production for today.